So good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock and we are calling to order the Planning Commission pre-planning meeting for the month of December. Gabrielle, take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, just a couple kind of points of order. First, we are preparing our workshop packets. Workshop this month is on the 17th, not Monday, because it is the holiday. So keep in mind it is Tuesday. We will probably be a little delayed in having our information online as well as the paper copies. My goal is by the end of Tuesday next week, so it'll still give you a full week if we can get them online Tuesday, is to have them online, but packets won't be ready for pickup for those of you who pick up the paper copies until probably midday Wednesday. And then anytime after. So just keep that in mind moving forward. I know, Barb, you will not be at workshop next Tuesday. Keep it
on the 17th, right?
The 17th, not next Tuesday. I'm sorry, the week. We're always a week ahead. The other thing Barbara had referenced is the text amendment that we discussed last month at workshop for the Carroll Creek overlay provisions dealing with density and some of the existing constraints on that. The applicant has actually requested to have a second workshop instead of progressing to the hearing, and that workshop will not be until February. So Barb won't miss that workshop coming up. That won't be on our agenda coming up. That'll be a month out. They will plan on resubmitting some additional materials to us at the end of January. And then we'll be able to review those, digest them, and package that into a new workshop summary, kind of repeat the whole thing for February.
So we would like to ask some questions about that. Okay.
Okay. I would, not keep them not substantive.
No. Yeah. No, it is sure. Procedural questions. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Strassen.
Sure. All right. So things that we would like to know. There's a lot of questions about the relationship between the Carroll Creek overlay, the East Street form-based code, the density enhancement area, how some of these other things are going to be implemented and the impact that they'll have on the Carroll Creek overlay, the relationship about which one takes precedence. We want to know who would be the best person in the city to answer those questions and ask that person to come to the workshop. It might be Mark. It might be somebody else. Let us know. Let's see. We also had some.
You're on mute.
I'm on mute.
I'm not on mute. There. Okay. I was hitting that button frantically. So let me just kind of re-say it so that I make sure I understand. You're interested in understanding how the Carroll Creek overlay and the future form-based code may interact.
But also what the future form-based code might look like, and if some of the provisions in that form-based code might be an appropriate way of dealing with some of the issues in the Carroll Creek Parkway overlay. Parkway.
And Gabrielle, you and I talked a little bit about that, but what the other thing that Commissioner Strassen brought up was that the density enhancement area, and it may be you, Gabrielle, but answering questions about that. And we also thought, would it make sense that Mark, and this was in a conference call that Commissioner Manalis and I had this morning with Joe, that the rest of you will hear about it. Well, it's, you can't get 3 commissioners together because that's a quorum. So I've been sort of having I've been having 2 sets of conversations. And Dorothy is just on fire with this project that I'll let her tell you about it. We do an email, but the suggestion was to bring Mark to the workshop and have him give information, have him give a little tutorial on this Carroll Creek overlay and maybe be open to questions. Was that right, Dorothy?
Yes.
In essence, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can interject, there are a few things that you and I, Barbara, talked about when we were at the commissioners conference. I'll put a list together so that we can make sure the right people are in the room.
Yeah. And then I was wondering, is it I know it's not typical, but is it feasible, possible for the city and or the planning commission to like invite somebody from downtown Frederick Partnership to come to the workshop and get input from them on the Carroll Creek overlay, and or somebody from NAC 11? Just, you know, if we're going to do this, I'd like to have not just rely on public comment, but I would like to reach out and ask people who are affected, you know, their thoughts on what's being proposed.
And this has nothing to do with what I understand from me and hearing Commissioner Strawson. This isn't anything about that there's a stand that any of us have. It's all about more information, really wanting to understand more of the context about this text amendment and its impact. Like in the conversation I had with Mark, that was just so valuable. So Gabrielle, do you have an answer to that, or is that something you'll get back to us on?
I will reach out to, you know, a couple folks, and Joe and Brandon and Mark, and we can discuss these things. I do know that we don't have a draft of the form-based code yet. So the information that's been put out through the charrettes and all that is what we also have access to. So in terms of looking too far into the future, I would caution that we don't have a draft. I don't know how much speculation anyone wants to do without risking setting up any sort of false impressions of anything, or making guarantees that, oh, the form-based code will address this, you know, there's so much unknown about how that will shake out. The reality is you have an application in front of you now, you know, and then the planning commission could vote to deny it because you know, you don't think it's consistent with the, you know, like the planning commission does not have to, the planning commission is autonomous in this and can make their recommendation.
And then turn it over to the mayor and board.
Correct.
Right. No matter what, it goes to them.
Right. I would hate to see anyone, and this wouldn't be because anyone's nefarious or not trying to do their best, but I would hate to see impressions given. As staff, it's difficult to speculate on things that have not been vetted through the public, because even if we think these are great staff ideas, right, that might not be what shakes out in the future. That might not be what the public will is. So to speculate and say, well, the density enhancement area and the Carroll Creek overlay and this text amendment, contemplating a speculative future that we're unaware of, is probably not something that you're going to get from us. You know, like I think that because we don't know, and it would be irresponsible of us to say, look, to support this text amendment on anything but the present circumstances of the world, right? We have to be a little bit myopic in that perspective. And it's not because I don't anticipate form-based code fully occurring and happening, but none of us know how it's going to look. And even as planners reviewing a draft and going, look, this is awesome, this is excellent, it could turn into something very, very different by the time the mayor and board approve it. So if you make a decision predicated on information that we provide to you about a speculative future that doesn't come to fruition, that,
well,
so it is a balance of, you know, I mean, it is, it's like everything we do in life. There is a certain amount of planning for the future, but living for today that we all do, right? Like we all plan on waking up tomorrow, but at the same time, today is what we know and what we have. So I think the discussion is great. And I think even just discussing how the unknown does play into this text amendment and thinking about that is valuable in and of itself, right? Acknowledging and saying, we don't know how this is going to shake out. We know it's going to shake out somehow. How does that influence our decision now? I think that in and of itself is a valuable discussion. So I encourage it, but I would caution that you know, balance the speculative future with the knowns now, because we don't know. So we can, you know, give updates on form-based code. We can talk about, you know, and I mean, frankly, you know, you could, and I don't want to get too into substance of the text amendment, but, you know, timing is everything in a lot of worlds, right? And maybe the planning commission looks at this and says, we have these other efforts, and there's, you know, there's a timing issue, and that would be
And
And-
it's possible that the applicant will hear all of the discussion and think, huh, you know,
and-
maybe this this text amendment isn't exactly what we want if we can imagine the scope of what might happen. So
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think, you know, I can't speak anymore at this point, except to say that, you know, we don't have a draft. I don't think it's I wouldn't want you to expect that we'd be able to come and say, look, these provisions are gonna make sure that the density doesn't adversely impact this or that or the other thing, because
Right.
we can't do that now. And we won't be able to do that in February, or March, I don't anticipate. So, but I think if there's additional information you need that will help you to sort through all that, that's all possible.
was there anything that I forgot to say, Barbara?
No, I think that is it. I think the big thing that we wanted to have Gabrielle address is if we could really reach out and specifically ask Mark to come, and then generally ask some of these others. And if we could, who would do the asking? Like, who would ask somebody from NAC 11? Who would ask somebody from the partnership?
I
yeah.
don't know. And that's something, I think we need to, as staff, be a little delicate about. Nobody wants to.
That's what I
play-
thought you would.
Nobody wants to play
Yeah.
favorites. Right. If I call somebody I know in NAC 11, because we need to present this to everyone, and this needs,
Yeah.
and that's why it's just a public meeting, because then everybody who wants to,
Right.
if there's a concern that people aren't informed that this is happening or it may have implications, you know, is there broader outreach? That's one thing, but to call up and say, you know, hey, so-and-so, I'd really like you to come and be this voice. We wouldn't be able to do that.
But is it inappropriate if someone knows, like, if Commissioner Strawson were to call up Kara Norman and just said, it just would be of interest to me if the partnership does have a point of view, I would love it if you could be at the workshop to give your point of view.
I don't, you know, you get into quasi-judicial, not quasi-judicial, ex parte communication. I don't know if I wouldn't want Joan to put herself in a position where she was soliciting people
Right.
who
Well,
could
that's
maybe
the whole-
be reflecting her, right? Like if
That's the point.
I
It
don't,
isn't somebody to reflect your position. It's just to hear their point of view, you know?
Yeah.
right, but could that also be, I am on the commission and I have a friend who's in the real estate industry and I'm calling them and telling them to come to testify in a position, could it be construed that way, to testify? And so I wouldn't want anyone to misconstrue what sounds like very good intents, just to get perspectives, as we called this person and told them to come testify because of
I got
anything.
So then, Gabrielle, what can we do? Like, if we can't,
So
we can't do this and we can't do that, what can we do? Because
Good
it's
question.
that we need
think, you know,
information.
it is a public process, and the people, you know, I mean, this is one of the big struggles with public processes, right, is that you get a lot of the same familiar faces. People who are engaged tend to be engaged, and people who are not engaged are hard to reach. As the government, we want to make sure that we're being as wide open to everybody as we can. So public engagement is trying to reach all of those people. So if there's a general plugging of our upcoming workshop that we can put on the NAC web pages, and we can put like that, that's how we communicate, because we're trying to get everybody and not trying to necessarily encourage, you know, or reach out to specific individuals, right? Like, we want the person who we haven't heard from to know about this as much as we want the person who we've heard from a lot to hear it. So the types of approaches we tend to take, right, are that kind of more holistic, like, okay, maybe, you know, we put Planning Commission website on the workshop agenda on the web every month, a week ahead of time. Is where you guys access it. You know, do we put out a blurb on our Facebook page that the Planning Commission workshop's been uploaded and there's great projects about certain things? You know, is there just better like PR, like just general efforts that can be made? That would be my initial how I would approach it from a government perspective, right? Like if the concern is just that people
What
are
can the
not aware.
commissioners do, though?
I'm happy to ask Scott Waxter about any one of you individually contacting anybody. Like I said, it doesn't cause me pause, just because I wouldn't want it to be misconstrued for someone to show up in a meeting and be like, April called me and she told me to be here to comment on this. And then everyone's going, is this April's best friend here who's speaking one perspective or not? So I don't want to see any of you compromised in that perspective.
But an
well,
email with everyone copied on it, is that okay? Like if an email is sent to an individual person or with everyone copied, with all the commissioners copied and staff, I mean, is that like, I'm just trying to figure out like another way, like what, is that okay?
Let me follow up with Scott and get his perspective.
And
I think,
and the person would definitely say, like, I remember when Alderman Russell said specifically at least once that she wanted to share before the agenda item came up an ex parte conversation that she's had. So it could be just that. If Scott feels comfortable with this, it could be one of the commissioners saying, I thought it was important to the commission to hear just wanted to get the feedback of this organization. Because it will impact. So we invited someone from their organization to come. So that's set up front versus, on the sly, I'm a friend of so-and-so's. So it's on the table, but I get the concern.
Could I weigh in?
Yes, please do.
It seems, I want to have the meeting about procedural things. And actually one of the procedural things is this whole concept of, that three of us can't speak at the same time. I disagree. I read the law a different way, but that's one of the subjects that I'd like to bring up. I think if we're talking about bringing people into this training session to discuss things that are going to be in front of us in the future, I think it's a very dangerous precedent.
I don't know if I was exactly following. Are we talking about the workshop, bringing in people discussing who to bring into the workshop to talk about it, or
no, not the workshop, this training, because that's what I thought we're talking about here.
No,
what training?
Sorry.
Oh, so
No.
you're talking about bringing people in a workshop.
asking people, organizations that might have an opinion on Carroll Creek overlay to
The
make
text
sure that they've read the proposed text amendment and just let them know that it's there. And if they have an opinion, we're talking about it at the February workshop and we'd love to hear their opinion.
But when does that come up to us as an organization to consider?
February.
In the February? Oh, so I
February
missed something
workshop.
there.
Well,
Okay.
this is the same one that we talked about. And I can't remember, Ron, were you at the last workshop?
The
I think I
December
went.
workshop.
You were.
Yeah.
You were, because I remember you saying parking was really your issue. So that text amendment is going to be workshopped again in February. And that's been the conversation, sorry if it wasn't clear, of inviting people from certain organizations where this will have impact, bringing greater context and information to us.
Yeah, I don't think, so I guess the question is it appropriate for us to invite people as opposed to them to volunteer to come in?
That was the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
All righty then. Thank you all for having this conversation.
Yeah.
So Gabrielle, we were going to send out, before you get to the agenda, we were going to send out, and Dorothy and I were going to send out an email about what she's been working on. I'd like Dorothy to just speak about it a little bit, and then we'll follow that up with the email. So Dorothy, since this was your brainchild, and you've done such great work on the document, would you share it with the commissioners, your thought, your thinking?
Yeah, I was just thinking along the lines of, ever since we had that conversation about the Oxford project and the infrastructure and the thing that the map that Cherian gave us that had all these different places that they were doing things. And I just felt like, sometimes we look at things in silos or in a vacuum when we really do need to have a broader understanding of what's happening in the city and around us and what might potentially impact us as we look at projects. So things kind of interconnect and click. And so I proposed to Barbara having a quarterly informational session for the commissioners. And it could be after the workshop. It could be a 20-minute presentation with 10 minutes of Q&A, or 10-minute presentation with a 5 or 10-minute Q&A about various topics. It could be about, one can be about affordable housing. There's different types of affordable housing. One can be about, what tools do we have as commissioners at our disposal that we can use when we look at an application and say, in order to benefit the city more, we'd like to broaden this or add conditions to that type of thing. Just having that conversation about anything that's on the CIP projects or city projects that have come before. Just a presentation where we are aware of what's happening. It would be quarterly. And so we spoke to Joe about it today. He seems to be on board. And so I created a framework of what that would look like, as well as provided some, I'll call it performance goals, but outcome goals in which we can measure against, whether this was successful or not to the commissioners, if it was, in any way helpful. So I guess we'll be sharing that document with you. When you look at it, we just want you to think about other topics that you may want to come up with as, it relates to what we do overall that, you may want to hear more about, whether it's MDPUs?
MPDUs.
News or
moderately priced.
Yes, or affordable housing or, transportation or just whatever, like, environmental site design, more questions around that, or organically around the environment, whatever, but anything that relates back to what we do, so that when we're looking at those applications, we have a broader perspective and understanding as we look at these things.
And two things. One is the topics would really be driven by you all, by us. Like, what do we want? We even talked about, let's say, quarterly, and Joe brought this up, if historic preservation was one, and that came from April. Well, then April, you could be the captain of that, of that topic, and who should come speak to us about what topics. The other thing is, we're very, very aware that the staff already has more on their plate than they should have. So the intent here is to not add something else. And ideally, this would actually, hopefully, help the staff, because you'd have a better informed commission that actually does a better job. And it's not to come up with like new training tools or create anything new. So we don't see, we're really hoping this doesn't take homework time as much as showing up and giving us information that you already have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and like I told Joe, it could be presentations that you may have provided in the past to the mayor and board or whatever, and it's just, a document that you just represent, or you might tweak slightly, but it wouldn't be something that will be from scratch and, take up a significant amount of time. So that was.
Well, that's our intent. And Joe or Gabrielle, I assume Joe's talked to you about it. And when I was going to send this email out, we're certainly going to copy you and Joe on it.
Thank you. Yeah, he did mention it wouldn't be an effort that I would personally be involved in, but definitely interested in seeing how that, it would not be something my staff or I would be directly related to, but I think it's a great thing to pursue. So yeah,
okay.
Please,
all
copy
right.
me. Great.
Well, thank you all for this time and conversation. So now we're going to shift to the actual agenda.
Before we do that, can I just make sure
of course.
there's So I didn't know that there was a Tuesday workshop. It's going to be this coming Tuesday.
The
The
17th. The 16th is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so the city office.
Right.
So
Okay.
the 17th is the workshop.
I'm going to be out of town, but what I'll do is, I know there's a thing about whether a commissioner read the minutes to a workshop meeting. If it's okay, I'll attend or listen in, obviously not attend online, so that I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, the video gets posted pretty much right after the meeting, so you should be able to catch up everything. And then if you have any individual questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
No, I'll do it online, but I'll as it goes on.
Real time.
I'm just going to be house sitting there.
Excellent.
So
I won't be doing that. I'll be on the beach. I'm not going to say what I'll have in my hand, but I'll be on the beach. Woohoo. Okay. Anything else, team?
Yeah,
All right.
we're good.
So on to the pre-planning, or actually the hearing agenda. The first thing is East Pass lots continuance. Is that basically the same because carryover from last time? Gabrielle's no longer there, but
Yes,
I
I'm
assume
sorry,
it
I
is.
Hop back on it. Yes, the continuance, they are requesting a 60-day continuance. The issue is with their archaeological investigation. That's can be a 3-step process, goes from anywhere from just an initial assessment where we go, there's nothing there. No, and our consultant and their consultant doesn't believe there's anything there, to, hey, there might be something there. Let's, look a little deeper. And then further, if there is a confirmation there's something there, there's mitigation plans and things like that. They're still working through that process. Obviously, the downtown location is one where there are high probability of historic and archaeological sensitive areas. So they're still working through that. So the 60 days is intended to hopefully give them adequate time to finish that process.
Okay, great. Second is our annual election of officers, and this is for chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. So I'll ask for nominations, and we'll have discussions. This is no public comment on any of this, right? It's just commission business. Okay. Any comments from anyone? Okay, on that. Okie dokie. Next one is master plan for Barrick property, and this is the second of 2 required hearings. And this is Sherry. Is Sherry with us? Hi, Sherry. I bet you thought you'd never have a chance to talk, huh?
You guys are going to be sick of hearing me after Monday. So just a couple of updates with that. One was the modifications are now 3 instead of 4. There was the one that is no longer required. So the modification letter is updated, as is the staff report for that. And then there was comment at the first hearing regarding traffic along Kent Lane and when Christopher's Crossing was going to be completed. And so, the applicant had addressed that, but that's mentioned in the staff report too. So other than that, I didn't have any other updates.
Any questions? I can see you all.
Nope.
Okay, I'll say I really love, not only do I love that you put the updates in the staff report, but the thing about the traffic, it was boxed and italicized and it jumped out, and that just makes it easy. Okay, all righty. Item D and E, West Patrick Street, 417 West Patrick Street, the final plat and the final site plan. Sherry.
Yes, so nothing new to report for those. And, with Barrick too, there were conditions of approval, same with this. So with both the plat and the site plan. So nothing really further for that one either. Just pull up the site plan. Yeah, so if you have any questions, you can answer them.
Any questions, comments? That's what I said. That's what I love about the virtual environment, because somebody can just go, okay, great. All right, moving right along. Frederick Manufacturing final site plan. Boy, we are going to get no one. We're never tired of you, but you've got the whole thing.
I do.
It must be exhausting.
It's the Sherry show.
Yeah, it's the Sherry show.
Love that.
Okay.
So for Frederick Manufacturing, nothing new with that as well. Just a couple of conditions of approval for that one. So that's it.
Hold on. I haven't had a chance to look at this before. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. On page 2, that second paragraph. I just thought it was interesting. So because they had a previously approved like minor site plan, and I guess what it never materialized. So now they have to do a major site plan rather than just resubmit or like it talks.
I think Gabrielle explained that, right? Didn't she explain that?
Yeah. What happens is, so in order to keep people from piecemealing their sites and just doing a minor site plan after minor site plan, once they do one minor site plan, then any other ones that follow that have to be major site plans. So, and that minor site plan was approved. So that's why this one got kicked into a major site plan.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Great. And it's always good to remind us about that. All righty. Take 5 car wash.
Okay, let me see if there was anything updated on this one. No, they're asking for the one modification. We discussed that at workshop, and I think that's it. So this one has 2 actions, and the recommendation, there are also conditions. There's 6 conditions for that one. Just really notes that they need to add to the plan.
Any questions, comments? Okay, great. All right. And then the next 2 items are Cannon Hill, the final site plan, and the combined forest stand delineation, and preliminary forest conservation plan.
And Sharon is out on leave today. She'll be back for Monday, but I'm going to just cover that real quick for her. On the site plan itself, there are no modifications associated with that, so it's only one motion you're going to be making for the hearing. There is some lighting spillover beyond the property lines that still exists on the lighting plan. Sharon has reached out to the applicant and talked with them. They are confident that they can resolve the issue, so instead of requesting modification, we've conditioned the plan upon them tweaking whether it's the cutoff fixtures or the locations. So that'll be a condition of approval that they adjust to meet that 0.0 foot candles beyond the property line. They also have a condition that they have to go to the mayor and board to request the multiple water and sewer line connections to the lot. That's a section of the city code that only allows one connection from the line in the public right of way into a lot. But with this being a lot that already has a lot of development on it and existing buildings, instead of reworking everybody's plumbing, they're going to ask for approval to have a new connection specific to this lot and leave to this building, and then leave everybody else alone. They have to execute their MPDU payment agreement, and then just complete notes on the plan with the forest conservation plan. That application is also being heard on Monday. One of the outstanding items from the workshop was that they are having to propose to remove trees that are off-site, that are basically on the properties, the adjoining properties. We did require them to make those other property owners party to this application, so it's no longer just this one developer's application. That way we're assured that those other property owners are aware of what's being proposed to impact their property. They have submitted the necessary agent authorization conversations. So those folks have authorized this applicant to act on their behalf with that respect. Separate and distinct from the government processes, the applicant will be, and this isn't necessary in the report, they don't have to do it for the conditions, but they'll execute private construction easements just for temporary, for the owner A to be on owner B's property or their contractors. But that's something that'll happen on the private side of things, but we are covered on our basis, knowing that those property owners have consented to that removal. So you will be considering the forest conservation plan, which is for the payment in lieu of, as well as a modification for the removal of those several specimen trees. And happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, so that making the other owners parties to this, has that happened already, or has it not happened? That has
Correct.
happened.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so when we do a modification, if we approve a modification to remove those trees, that's already in place, so those owners know that.
Yes.
And they
Yes,
have consented to that. Okay.
Right. So that what they've done is they sign an agent authorization form, which is allowed in this case, Sean Benjaminson, the engineer, to act on their behalf.
Okay.
So it is with good faith that we assume that Sean Benjaminson has done his job to say, this is the plan, this is what we're proposing, these people are agreeing to it. So that
And
is.
will that be part of, I mean, is that part of the, I haven't gotten that far in that packet. Is that part of the packet?
I
Those agent authorizations?
I believe we did attach those.
Okay. Okay, yeah,
So
that's
that-
it. Thanks.
And which one would that have been? Oh, here it is. I see agent authorization on the combined forest stand delineation, because that's really what it has to do with.
Okay.
And that's the same
And-
form we use, you know, if Chris Smoriga is the applicant, but I own the property, I have to, as the owner, I'm authorizing and saying this person is allowed to do all of my business with the city of Frederick. And without that form, we don't want to work, because we want to make sure that if you're not the property owner, it's one thing if you come in with a permit for your property and you're submitting to do something.
Right.
But if you have a contractor applying in your place, those forms always get signed.
Okay. So before we adjourn, anything else from any of the commissioners?
No?
Anything else from you, Gabrielle?
I think covered.
Okay. Well, great. Well, happy Friday, happy weekend.
Yay.
The meeting's adjourned.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.